Chapter 6. The moment everything changed. For a few seconds, I considered staying quiet. After all, I'd spent years staying quiet. Why stop now? Brandon was still talking, still smiling, still enjoying the attention. Honestly, he said, this company is going places. I nodded. It is. He laughed. You know about them? A few relatives looked surprised. I took a sip of water. A little. Brandon smirked. Maybe if I get hired, I can help you get an entry-level position. The table exploded with laughter. Same jokes, same assumptions, same story, except this time. The ending was different. I slowly placed my glass on the table, then looked directly at Brandon. You probably won't need to help me. He raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? Yeah, why's that? The entire table watched. I could feel Grandma looking at me, almost like she already knew what was coming. I smiled politely. Because I own the company. Silence. Not awkward silence. Not confused silence. The kind of silence that happens when reality crashes into a lie people have believed for years. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Nobody spoke. Brandon blinked. Once. Twice. Then laughed nervously. Good one. I didn't laugh back. His smile slowly disappeared. You serious? I nodded. The backyard suddenly felt smaller. My uncle stared at me. What? I reached into my pocket, opened my phone, then placed it on the table. The company website was open. Founder and CEO, Ethan Parker. My photo, my name, my company. Everyone leaned forward. Nobody said a word. Brandon looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. My aunt covered her mouth. My father stared at the screen. Mom looked completely shocked. And for the first time in my life, nobody interrupted me. Nobody laughed. Nobody looked past me. They were finally listening. Chapter 7. The family favorite falls silent. Brandon's face turned pale. He looked at the screen again, then at me, then back at the screen. No way, I shrugged. Way? The confidence disappeared from his voice. What do you mean you own it? I founded it. When? About 6 years ago. The backyard remained silent. My uncle frowned. 6 years? I nodded. Yep. Why didn't you tell anyone? That question almost made me laugh, because the answer was obvious. Nobody asked. For years, nobody cared enough to ask what I was doing. Nobody cared enough to listen. They had already decided who I was. Why would I waste time correcting them? Brandon sat down heavily. The same man who had spent years acting superior suddenly looked very small, very uncertain, very human. And honestly, I didn't enjoy it. That's the weird thing about success. People think revenge feels amazing. Most of the time, it just feels sad, because the people disappointing you are usually the same people you once wanted approval from. Chapter 8. The truth comes out. Dad finally spoke. Ethan. His voice sounded different, softer. When did all this happen? I looked at him. A long time ago. He looked guilty, painfully guilty, because suddenly he realized how much of my life he'd missed. Mom's eyes were watery now. You built all this by yourself? I nodded. Mostly. Nobody knew what to say. The family favorite wasn't the favorite anymore. The successful cousin wasn't the most successful cousin anymore. The failure story they'd told themselves for years was gone, and people hate losing their stories, especially stories that make them feel superior. Brandon finally cleared his throat. So, he forced a laugh. I guess that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. I almost smiled. The company employed nearly 400 people, generated millions in revenue, and had offices in 3 states. Pretty impressive. Sure. Grandma laughed first. A real laugh. A loud laugh. And suddenly, everyone joined her. The tension cracked. But Brandon wasn't laughing. Because deep down, he knew something. For years, he had treated me like I was beneath him. And now he couldn't stop replaying every conversation, every joke, every insult, every moment. Chapter 9. The job interview. The next morning my phone rang. The caller ID made me smile. Human resources. My company? I answered. Morning. The recruiter sounded nervous. Mr. Parker. Yes. We've completed Brandon Donnelly's interview process. There it was. I leaned back. Okay. There was a pause. Then she said carefully, he wasn't selected. I wasn't surprised. Not because he was my cousin. Because he simply wasn't qualified. Confidence can open doors. Competence keeps them open. And Brandon had spent years confusing the two. The recruiter continued. He listed family leadership connections. I laughed. Of course he did. Thanks for letting me know. After hanging up, I stared out the window, thinking. I could have changed the outcome. One phone call, one favor, one exception. But that would have made me exactly like the people who once ignored talent and rewarded popularity. And I promised myself long ago I would never become that person. Chapter 10. The Apology. A week later, someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, Brandon stood there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. You busy? A little. Can we talk? I stepped aside. He entered slowly, looking uncomfortable. The confident salesman was gone. This version of Brandon looked real, maybe for the first time ever. We sat across from each other. Finally he spoke. I owe you an apology. I stayed quiet. You know. He rubbed his hands together. I always thought I was smarter than you. I smiled slightly. I noticed. That got a small laugh. Then his face became serious. I was wrong. For years, I imagined hearing those words. And now that they were finally here, they didn't feel as satisfying as I expected. Because healing doesn't come from apologies. Healing comes from acceptance. And I'd already accepted who I was, with or without his approval. Brandon looked down. I treated you badly. Sometimes. A lot of times. Yeah. He nodded slowly. Then said something that surprised me. I was jealous. I frowned. Jealous? He laughed bitterly. You always looked calm. That wasn't what I expected. You knew who you were. His voice cracked slightly. I needed people to tell me I mattered. The room fell silent. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The bragging, the arrogance, the constant need for attention. It wasn't confidence. It was insecurity wearing confidence as a costume. And once I understood that, the anger disappeared. Chapter 11. The Real Victory. 3 years later, Grandma passed away peacefully at 92 years old. The entire family gathered again. Same town, same people, different story. After the funeral, we sat together, sharing memories, laughing, crying, remembering. At one point, my uncle raised a glass, then looked directly at me. You know, he smiled. Your grandmother was always proud of you. I looked down, trying not to cry. She told us years ago, we'd all regret underestimating you. Everyone laughed, even Brandon, especially Brandon, because now the joke wasn't about me. The joke was about how wrong everyone had been. As the sun began setting, I stood alone near the cemetery fence, looking out across the fields, thinking about Grandma, thinking about everything, the money, the company, the success, the years, and I realized something important. The greatest victory wasn't becoming rich. It wasn't proving people wrong. It wasn't building a company. It wasn't even the respect I eventually earned. The greatest victory was finally understanding that my worth never depended on anyone else's opinion, not my family's, not my cousins, not society's, not anyone's. Because the moment you stop needing approval, you become free, and freedom is worth more than all the money in the world. The end. Final message. The people who underestimate you today are often judging a chapter they don't understand. Keep building. Keep growing. Let your results speak when the time is right. Subscribe for more videos.